So we'll begin with Taaruvot Siman Kuf Zayin. In some ways, this is a continuation of the last seif of Siman Kuf Vav, which actually the Gra makes a comment. If you want to understand this seif base, just look at the next Siman. In other words, they're somewhat related. The last seif in Siman Kuf Vav dealt with good advice on if there is an Isser that is me'urav, that is mixed with heter, as the example in this case was a chaticha sheish bo chelav, that it's advisable that one wait until everything cools down. Because if you begin to remove some of the tavshil, you may have a problem. You may not have the shishim that's required at one point at any given moment. You may have shishim. We're assuming that you do have. So therefore, since you do have, you're better off. I mean, it is advisable to wait until it's tanim, until everything cools off. So then you can begin to remove, and then there's no question of whether that which remains with the Isser will not have the required shear to be mevatel the tam. And the piece itself, of course, if you were to remove that one first, that would also somewhat be a problem, according to the mechaber. There is the chelev that is attached to the basar while it's still hot. Removing it, even though in the ktera it doesn't pose so much of a problem, once you take it out and it's all by itself, it's still hot, it can be a problem. There are more added to that, of course, since we hold the chaticha nas and nevela, you might as well just remove it right away. You can, because
you can't save it.
You can't save it anyway. It's a form of Isur Dovuk, according to the Ramah. As far as waiting till everything cools down, of course you can do that too.
Yeah, it would help you.
Yeah, it would help. So anyway, so that seif had to do with good advice on how to deal with these situations of taruvos where you do have shishim, but you may run into a problem if not handled properly, because you can run out of the shear. You can be, you can have a situation where you may have had it, but now you don't, and it's still hot. And that's the problem. We're talking about when things are still hot. That's when they pose a problem. So in Kuf Zayin we have two seifim. They're very different. One deals with eggs and fish, and the other one deals with insects. And it's very interesting that they're in the same siman, because they're totally not related. The second seif dealing with insects is more what we've covered in the past. It has to do with begimas. Remember that?
Yes.
Tam. And the first seif has to do with what we just covered. Best advice on how to deal with a situation where you've cooked beitzim, eggs, or cooked fish, and it was discovered at some point that in the beitzim there was an efroach. There was a chick developing, which is of course a big problem. It's not alive. It's not. It's treif. You can't have no shchita, right? And that's a seif, and that is a halacha that is discussed before. We've covered that a little bit. It's also in a separate sin about beitzim alone, and how to deal with non-kosher eggs, or an egg that is kosher per se from a clean bird, but it had an efroach, a chick that was developing. As I mentioned, perhaps in the Philippines, it's a delicacy. Developing chick, it's called balot. If you ever see a Filipino, ask him, "Do you ever have balot?" He will laugh at you and say, "How do you know about these things?" Yeah. Anyway.
How do you know?
Yeah. Anyway. So of course, to them, well, they have a soup with blood too. So it's not, that's another delicacy, a soup of blood. But anyway, for us,
Isn't there such a they have something like that?
there's other countries that have all these kinds of things, yeah. And then of course there's borscht that looks like blood.
Yeah. That's the
Anyway,
Jewish
yes, with lemon juice, of course. Anyway, by the way, borscht, some eat it as a hot soup and some as a drink, as a cold drink. Depends where you're from. Yeah. So then we have a situation of dag tome. In Sif Aleph we will have a situation where you may have been cooking lots of fish and you've discovered that one of them was catfish. One of them was a dag tome, it was an unclean fish, of course, which can affect the entire stew. Right? You recognize it, but of course you have the problem of tam. So maybe I'll read the mechaber, then tell you a little bit what's going on. There's a lot of shitas. If you really want to get into what is going on here, you really have to review all the shitas. because the Mechaber and the Ramah are taking this halacha not directly necessarily from the Tur. It's more it's to be found in the Sefer HaTruma and the Smag actually, where the Mekor of this scenarios appear, and there's Machlokes Rishonim on how to interpret that halacha that is brought down, under what circumstances it applies. So briefly, I'm going to read it, then explain it. So, one who cooks many eggs in their shell. And of course, in their shell it makes a difference too. Shell is better than no shell. But with an efrach, later on we will see that it doesn't really make a difference. It makes a difference with unclean eggs. But with the efrach, it doesn't make so much of a difference. Efrach developing in an egg, you're not really being helped that much, even though the other eggs have their shell on it. Okay, but it's an interesting note that there are situations where no shell or a shell can make a difference. Here it does not. So you've cooked many eggs in their shell. It's advisable not to remove them until everything cools off. Or he has actually an additional advice. If you don't want to wait so long, you can pour over them cold water. You may have done this before. You've cooked hard-boiled eggs, you put the pot in the sink, and it's hot. You don't want to take out the eggs with your hands, or you don't have a spoon or whatever. You pour cold water into the pot to cool it off. That's all.
And it's a good idea to do that even if you pour cold water over it.
Yes.
And the egg inside shrink, the shell remains easier
to peel.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would have to have sheet in the water.
Right, we're assuming this situation, that we have a shishim. Yeah. Nevertheless, the reason why he's saying you want to cool it off, you want to wait till they cool, or you want to pour cold water, letzanenon, then you'll take them out. What's the issue here? Mishum nechashinan, not with today's eggs. Today's eggs that you buy, you don't have this chashash so much, and I'll talk about it in a second. Unless they're cage-free. Mishum nechashinan shema yimotze be'achas mehen efroach. You may find on one of those eggs that you may cook many eggs. It just may happen to find an efrach in one of them, a chick developing.
Sure.
Now, what's the problem? If you take them out before, remember we're talking about a clear rishon, it's very hot. It's no longer in the fire, still, it's hot. If you take them out before they cool off, it could happen that it could very well be, you don't know, till later. You don't know, the egg that has the frog may be the last one, or the last ones that you take out. Then, if that's the case, she would make the rest also in the pot. At that point, if you have shishim, but you've removed some of the eggs, and it's still hot, it didn't cool off, the frog one may be the one that's remaining towards the end. Typical or very similar to the situation we spoke about last time, that you will not have shishim where you had it to begin with. So, just be patient, wait till it cools off. Then, when it's cold, it's not a problem. It's only a problem when it's hot. Okay. Now, I just said briefly that this is somewhat of not relevant today so much, because the eggs we buy don't have this problem. They don't even have the problem of blood. Safnot de'ara, as they're called, the way they are produced. The eggs, the way they are produced today, without ever coming close to becoming fertilized, don't have this problem. We're machmer in blood. We see the blood. We remove the blood. You check, of course. We check.
We still check.
We check to see if there's blood because we remove the blood. But even if, but it's not really blood.
That's why I'm asking.
We're machmer. We remove blood that we see. We don't use it.
The red spots, if we find a red spot that we
remove it.
If it was blood, we couldn't remove it. We threw it out.
No, you still would be able to, depending where it was. Yeah, depending where it is. Some the yellow, the white. Yeah, exactly. But still, there's various shitas on that.
Okay.
Yeah. But kosher can hear that it's not a problem.
Right.
Yeah, it would be easier. Yeah.
It could not have been fine. So therefore
Right.
It could not be blood.
Real blood.
But
There's more leniencies because of that.
why would we have to check?
Well, that's why we can make hard-boiled eggs.
That's why we make hard-boiled eggs. We're not concerned about that. Yeah. But when
I
you
don't
see it,
understand.
you see it. Yeah, you see it. You remove it. But if there's questions that got mixed and so forth, it is more lenient because it's not a real problem. Real blood, it would be a problem. if it all got
And
mixed
by
up.
cage-free eggs, the ones you could get rid of.
Cage-free, they're called?
Yes, ones that run around
Yeah.
freely farm.
That's a good point. I guess those
They
you
could-
may...
But Rabbi Taaruvot always warns against seriously, and if you find out to...
And therefore you should not make hard-boiled eggs.
he never mentioned that, but
No.
I believe that's a reasonable yes.
Well, that's as far as the blood.
Yeah, sure.
What about the froch?
But, it's a whole different-
You would see it. You would see it.
You would
yeah.
see it because it would crack?
Yeah, you would. It would come out. You would see it. Yeah.
No, but I mean when you're boiling it, it would crack and you would hear fluff inside.
No, not necessarily. Later on, you may see it.
So then you would know it. So then you have to always let them back down in the pot.
That's what
Always.
That's what it's saying.
Not only when you went fluff.
No. Here we didn't know.
Right. You'd have
We
to
don't
always-
know.
Yeah.
That's what
And
he's
you have
saying.
to always make sure that you have 60 against every egg.
Right.
So it's actually 61. I remember said by eggs.
Right. By eggs is 61.
61.
Right. 61.
So,
Yeah.
so 61, l'chayra, you always have to cook at least 62 eggs.
Yes. So
At
that's
once.
right. So here, that's why if you don't have it, right, it's going to be a problem. Even if it cools down, if you don't have the shish.
So with cage-free eggs,
Right.
actually, you can, if you do scrambled eggs on your slide up or something, where you check them before, put them in the shell, in the pot.
If you're going to be cooking a lot of eggs, this is what the seif would be talking
just
about.
saying,
Yeah.
then you need to 62.
Yeah, you need to cook a
At
quantity
least
of
62.
eggs.
You
Yeah.
can't do less.
And as we're going to see, the eggs ordinarily, traditionally, nobody makes that many eggs at once unless you're a caterer.
That's the problem.
And that's the problem. So we're going to see that there's going to be a difference between the fish and eggs because of that. But the Machaber is, in general terms, just telling us that you might as well wait because of the chashash. Maybe the froch will be found at the end.
Well, I think the organic eggs, the cage-free and organic.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. Okay. Maybe maybe we should read the Ramah too. V'im lo asaken. If you did not do so, as you're going to see, the Machaber and the Ramah pretty much agree. The Ramah just brings the di'evid situation. What happens if you did not? The Machaber doesn't say what happens, but apparently they both agree. You look at the Beis Yosef, it would not be a problem because they both follow the same sheet in the Rishonim that b'di'evid it's okay, but for a variety of reasons. And that's what's interesting about here. There are a variety of reasons of why it would be mutter b'di'evid. V'im lo asaken ela ira oison leke'ora. You just pour them into another bowl. V'nimtza achas mehen treifa. One of them was found to be treifa. Yesh oison nakol. There's some that say the whole thing is aser. The chashina we concern shema treifa nisha lebasoif. Maybe the treifa was the one that was left behind. But there, at that point, lo velo hoyoshishim begdero levatel. There was no 60 in the gdero. The gdero is the original pot. V'ner samash begdero. That which is in the gdero, of course, became aser. But wait a minute. Not only did that which was in the gdero become aser, v'choizer v'oser kol ma shebeke'ara. Now that you pour later in the second shift, you pour that which was in the Kedera into the Ka'ara, you will aser that which is in the Ka'ara as well.
Because it's still hot.
Oh,
Or is it because you don't know which mutter or which one's
that's where was why would it become aser? We're going to see. Apparently, it's because it's still hot.
Oh,
Apparently,
because you can't distinguish it. You don't know which one was. You don't know which one came in the second shift already. Came
Yes.
first, since you distinguished it.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Either one, fine. Both of them are mentioned. V'chem b'dagim ktanim. So here the Ramah adds, and the same would apply to fish, small fish. Shenimtza dakta mebekera. In the ke'ara, they found, after they poured, they found a tomeh, a dak tomeh. This is not kosher, So of course you're going to remove it, but what about everything else? And what happened is that you didn't pour them all at once, then it wouldn't be a problem, because if you poured them all at once, now they're in a klisheni. Okay? The problem is, v'lo ira kulam bepam achas el torah, it was not done at once, little by little. De'az yishlochu shema nisha isur lebasof. It was left behind the isur, just like with the eggs. However, the good news is, yesh matirim bechol inyan. There are some who are matir in every way. Eggs, dogim. Why? So look at this. The Ramah brings an explanation, but this is not necessarily the explanation that everybody accepts as the explanation. But the Ramah says, you know what? Lo machzikin in isur. We're not machzik. We're not going to make an assumption that there's an isur. Lo ma the nishar isur lo shishim. We don't know that. Why say that? It's after the fact. We're not going to make that assumption. Lo machzikin in isur. Lo ma the nishar isur lo shishim. And this is the shita of Rabbeinu Shimshon.
Fish, the current problem with fish.
Right.
To the worm issue.
Why?
And you're going to end up with this problem because the bad list, so to speak.
All right.
The odds are you're going to have fish in there.
Why? Because of what?
To the worms. If you hold to the worms, there's a serious problem.
I don't think the worms will be a problem because the
You
worm.
make that fish.
I don't think so. No, the worms will not be a problem with it as a duck tummy that has the tom. Yeah, the worm will be just a worm, and if you can identify it, it shouldn't be a problem.
Would the worm be in the category of flies? It's something more.
Yeah, that is not only is most. It's not enough to say something is most, but remember we made a tremendous big chiluk between something that is most be'atzmoi and something that is poigem the tam.
Yeah.
So according to everybody, it would be fine.
Yeah, because the worm is small.
So even if that got lost somewhere, there would not even be a problem with the birya, especially if it was cut up in pieces. Yeah.
It was mouse fast.
Mouse
That's
be'atzmoi.
why they say, for instance, gefilte fish. The ones that want to usher fish
Right.
worms. So they say, generally speaking, gefilte fish is good. That probably.
Yeah, you don't see it. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so we're not mazik isa v'chein ikar v'afilu ledasa oisrim. More adds, ein lesser or kelim shenizbashlu bo. You don't have to make the kelim that was cooked in it usher. The mamid nakli of cheskosa, we assume that we put the keli on its original chazaka, and its original chazaka was that it was kosher. Okay, so this is briefly the mechaber the Ramah. The situation. If you just read the mechaber Ramah, you think it says, okay, fine. I'm expecting him to have pages, yeah, because if you look at the shach, it's a long shach. If you look at the meforshim on this, there's quite a bit of meforshim in explaining various scenarios on how this can happen in the pouring, okay, which we'll discuss maybe 2 or 3 of them. And there's also various explanations given as to why b'di'evet it's mutter, not only because of what the Ramah says. So that's why there's pages, on the various scenarios and various heterim. Yeah. So here, as we said before, the issue is we want to make sure that what we have poured remains mutter, just like it was mutter before because there was shishim. But there can be a problem if you did not wait until it cooled off, and while it was hot, you poured it. And on this, it would be a machlokes on what the din is b'di'evet. The Riva and others are going to say b'di'evet is aser, unless it happened in a totally different way, which we'll see. And Rabbeinu Baruch and Rabbeinu Shimshon are basically going to be the ones that are going to say that b'di'evet it's mutter, for a variety of reasons. Okay, so the first scenario is based on the way we saw it in the Mechaber and the way the Torah's Chatas, which is Ramah, explained, that we're talking about that you're pouring the fish, forget about eggs now for a moment, you're pouring the fish from the Kdeira, the pot, into the Ke'ara, little by little. That's one scenario, okay, little by little. So there you have the problem of maybe what remains in the Kedera is not sufficient to be mevatel the tome fish, right? Now you don't know about the tome fish till later on, right? You see, you have in the mixture of dogim tehorim, you see a dog tome. So now, what's the problem? So you don't have shishim in the Kedera left, because it could be that the dog tummy was left behind. Because even according to the Rivot that is going to tell us that this scenario is osir, he would agree if the dog tummy is the one that came out first, and later on you went ahead and poured the rest into the ke'ara, no problem. In a kli sheni, you will not have the problem of bishul, you would not have the problem of tam. So but what's his chashash? His chashash is, and that's the whole source of the problem here, is that there is a chashash that the dog tummy may remain towards the end, may be left behind. And then you have 2 problems. You have the problem of that which is in the Kedera becoming also because there's no shishim. And then when the second shift comes around and you pour that which has become aser on top of the other fish that are already in the ke'ara, they will make the rest aser. And that's where I would like to see if he elaborates more on this particular point on why, according to the Riva, will pouring it over make those that remain in the ke'ara asr. Because the explanations given is either because there's irui, remember the famous irui, and irui is mevashel kedei klipa, So we're talking about, yes, there will be an Isser, but it will only be an Isser Kedei Klipo. If that would be the case, that's all he's saying, the Rivah, I accept it. To some extent it makes sense. Iru Mevasha Kedei Klipo. You have Roitev, you have the brine, or whatever, you have the liquid, and you're pouring hot from a clear rishon, that's Irui. Irui is Mevasha Kedei Klipo.
He's got some good.
Yeah, I'm sure. But there's another explanation given that, as you said, you began to point out, or is it because now that you pour them on top of the others, you don't know which batch was with the Dagatame?
Right.
It's all mixed up right now, and I don't know which one is which.
Probably you don't even.
So
No, it would be the minority.
What is that?
Minority.
No, we don't know any. We don't know anything. We don't know anything about minority majority now.
Yeah.
Apparently, he doesn't even mention that, and that's
But
what.
Beitzim.
No, forget about Beitzim right now.
So
No
you're
Beitzim.
talking about
Just Dugim right now, and I'll tell you why Beitzim is slightly different. They're similar, but slightly different.
But wouldn't Dugim? Oh, so you've got Reuter.
Yeah. So what's the problem over here? So you pour them together. So if you say the problem is Iru Kedei Klipo, I understand that. But the other problem that you mix them now, you don't. Well, what is he saying? I don't know which batch it is that was with the Dagatame, because it's all mixed up right now in the Ka'ara. It's all mixed up because it's all mixed up. It's all Aser, because I don't know which fish.
Right. There's the Usher one.
What about Bitul B'Roiv?
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I said
That what?
majority or minority. You don't know if you had a minority remaining.
No,
as
but
part of
now,
the
but
majority.
now.
Yeah, but now I don't know if there's a majority of meat. Could be the majority is the Usher fish. The fish were together with the Tame fish.
Mm-hmm.
Now they became Usher in the Kedera.
Right.
How many? Let's say 40 kazaisim of fish now.
Right.
And now let's say I already poured out 20 kazaisim of fish. So now I have an eruv of 40 kazaisim of fish Tame with
Right.
20 kazaisim that is I've got a majority of Tame. Now I don't know when it changed.
That's the problem. That's part of the problem. Right. We don't know
When it
which
takes-
batch,
Yeah.
because to begin with, we don't know. This is a little bit of tzorachin, I'll tell you why. We don't know which batch was with the dog tummy, right? Now they're all mixed together.
Not only that, even if I know that the first batch.
And there's Roitev, too.
Right. That's right. Now I don't know.
And it's
well,
hot.
he's talking
Yeah.
about there is no right to
Okay, that depends on the scenario.
No, but
yeah.
but I also, even if I know batch 1 or batch 2, I don't know which batch had the majority.
Okay, we're going to see. We're going to look at that. Right, we're going to look at that.
Because batch 1 is only the amount I need to remove, so I no longer have 60 remaining against the fish tame. So how much fish was in there?
What if I were to tell you? What if I were to tell you, okay, that outside in the Ka'ara, the roiv is already there?
If the roiv is already there, then it shouldn't be any different from if you have two kosher hot dogs and one non-kosher.
In other words, later on you mix it.
Then you say, whatever, I'm taking from the roiv.
So that's what we need to see here, because
You can't rely on that if you don't know for sure that there is.
Okay. So you would have to make that distinction. That if you know, you know. But he doesn't do that. So that's why I say it's a tzorech chiyun. He doesn't distinguish. I'll tell you why. Because once we see the next shita, which is Rabbeinu Baruch, that's the Rivah. The Rivah has a chashash over here that, listen, maybe it was left behind and there was no shishim, right? Now, Rabbeinu Baruch is one of the ones that is matter. He says the dogim shebeka'ora, they're not going to become asur because the dogim are bato beroiv. The dogim that later on you pour into the ka'ara, dogim bato beroiv.
How does he know that?
Oh, okay. Yavesh beyavesh, he says. Din of so
So there's no right to. Right. Even if there's no right to, still how does he know?
okay.
Does he has right?
He's but no, because you're saying that there's a chashash. Okay, you're saying that there's a chashash that before, okay, that the dog told me. The shach is very interesting here. It's a very long shach. According to the shach requires over 120 about in order for this to apply. It's a very interesting shach.
In order for what?
In order for this svara to be acceptable,
That
he says it would have to be that you're saying that there's 59 left behind, right? For it to become asur. That's what you're saying.
Right.
You're saying that there's
And in the
59.
pot you now have
And in the
the
pot you're
majority.
saying that there's a majority.
Right,
So,
that's my point,
So you
exactly.
have to have 120
Exactly.
or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. That's my point.
Understand?
Exactly.
According to the shach. Okay? But we will see. I don't think everybody goes along with that. But we have to...
How can you know it?
Okay, so that's why it says it's tzorech chiyun over here, because they don't make that distinction. They don't make that on condition that you have the rov there. I mean, you're right. He didn't say that. Neither did Rabbeinu Baruch say that. He's just saying it's batul b'roiv. Everything is batul b'roiv. It's yavish b'yavish. It's batul b'roiv because you do have roiv. Okay, you do have roiv.
You have roiv against the dog that was tam in the stomach.
Right.
But who says you have roiv against the tower that was cooked with?
Right. Okay. So that's what we need to tzorach here. Okay.
Oh,
that's what I'm.
Hold on.
Yes.
You say, of course. That's what we're saying right now. Is to say chaticha nasa nevela hanan with shari sur. If you're going to say it's not hanan,
I don't think hanan plays a role too much over here.
I'll tell you why I think it does. Yeah. If you don't say hanan, then you have by the dagim that are tahor, you have isur balua. How much isur did the dagim that were tahor that were cooked with the tameh one bulea? Maximum the size of the dog that's tameh. They can't be bulea more isur than the dog itself that's tameh. Maximum.
Right.
So if it's an isur balua, then the dagim that were bulea the isur are mitzaref with the heter dagim to be mevatel the one dog that was tameh. Now they themselves.
Remember the dag tameh you will identify here. We're not being mevatel the dag tameh.
But they absorbed the taste.
Right.
That's the problem. That they have an isur balua.
Right.
So if you say hanan, but by the dagim that were bulea the isur, they themselves now became an isur in their own right.
Right.
We need to mevatel them as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But
fine.
if you say that it's isur balua, then
it's always going to be an isur balua.
Well, okay,
and that's why.
No, isur balua, not hanan.
No. Forget about hanan because the isur balua.
They only need to be mevatel the dog tameh. How much isur could they be bolea? Maximum the size of the dog tameh. There was no more tuma in the pot. So maximum the amount that they could be bolea is the dog tameh itself.
Okay, originally, yes.
Right. So
Right.
they didn't become hanan. They're not hanan.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So now in the pot you have the dog tameh plus the second time the dog tameh that was
be.
balua.
Okay, we'll look into that. That's a possibility that maybe that
Now
would be.
you would need to.
Yeah, but the difference of balua versus not balua is because how could you say batul b'roiv if it's a birya? But a birya is only a birya if it's also machmas atzmai.
That's the fish itself, and that's
Right. I'm saying that's the fish that were boileya will never have a problem with being a birya. One of the conditions of a birya, if you remember, is that it has to be also machmas atzmai, not a tambalua.
And the duck, the tameh you threw out.
You take out, you identify it.
Right.
It has its whiskers on, if it's a catfish or whatever. You see, yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit of the tzorech over here, more as we will see. L'gabe de roiv. How do you really have a roiv? Do you have the roiv? And according to the Rivo who answers, he doesn't say about the roiv possibility. In other words, he just says it becomes also. How does it become also when you pour it? Is it because it's kedei klipa as you're pouring through iroi? Or because you don't recognize them, and they're all mixed up. You don't recognize. Is it because you lack roiv? I mean, So that's what is not clear. Nobody really gets into it. That's what I want to leave that for another time. So we have the shita that says it's aser for some reason. Okay, we have the shita of Rabbeinu Baruch that says it's muter b'di'evet. Why? His explanation is because you have roiv. It's a din of yavish b'yavish, simple din of yavish b'yavish, and it's not a din of birya, and that's it. Now, the Shach explains that based on the chashash of Irui, that even according, Shach says, and this is also big machloikes, halacha lemaisa. Shach says, even according to Rabbeinu Shimshon, that you say it's mutter, you would still have to remove a klipa because the Irui is there. In other words, so Rabbeinu Shimshon would not say that you don't need a klipa. You may need a klipa because the Irui is Irui. But once you remove the klipa, you're fine. You don't have to worry about the rest of it because of din bitul b'roiv. So that's the shach. That if we're talking about fish, which you can remove a klipa, with the eggs you can't, that's what you would do. Taz brings down the Yamsha and Shloima. Taz has a slightly different mehalachi. He goes with
You said by eggs you can't.
There's no klipa by eggs. How are you going to make a
The
klipa?
eggshell?
No, by the
klipa?
froch it doesn't make a difference.
So the
Remember, with the
eggshells
froch, the shells don't make a difference.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if you have the eggs are still in their shells in the pot,
Yeah,
and now the tameh egg hits,
right.
then
Tame eggs, yes. Tame eggs, when you have shells, it's good.
the froth.
The froch doesn't help if you have a shell.
No, but when it's coming iroi, it's coming as an iroi, so you only have a ketei klipa. Now you have on the eggs a shell. So why wouldn't that shell of the eggs be looked upon as ketei? If you
Yeah, with the eggs, it didn't.
Well, they still have their shells. Why wouldn't removing the eggshell satisfy the requirement of kilipa?
Remember, with the eggs, we didn't really have a situation where you pour them, even though you can. The first scenario was the one that's left behind. Okay?
But it doesn't metama. So if you not put them all in a bowl,
and then it would be an issue of mixture. It would be more of an issue of mixture.
So
it wouldn't have enough.
Baroi.
Yeah, and now so it's good you brought it up. Why not? You can have rov here, not by eggs. So the simple explanation that the Pri Megadim says, I think Pri Megadim says, is all of this is we can discuss about fish because customarily when you make a lot of fish with eggs, people don't make that many eggs that you would have the rov. So that's
so you don't even have that.
So you don't have that situation.
That solution.
That solution. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so let's just go on a little bit. The Taz goes in a different Halacha. He brings the Yam Shloimeh that you don't answer the Iroi of the Isur because the Iroi of the Isur, the little bit of Isur Roitev that is there is very little. The Yam Shloimeh says, and the Roitev is Batal Berov. So he seems to be saying that there would be no Iroi problem. It will be misbatel in beshishim the roitev that is already there. Okay, that's another mahalach. Now, another tziyur, another scenario is where you take the liquid and you pour it out first from the pot.
Are we talking about fish?
Fish, not together. Why would you want to pour out the liquid before pouring out the fish so it doesn't splash? That's how the commentaries explain here. Mm-hmm. You have an additional scenario. In other words, there's a machlokes what the scenario is. So of course, there's some nafkaminas in the scenarios. The following scenario would be you poured out all the liquid first, right, and then all you have is fish.
Now that liquid still intended for being poured down.
It's poured out, right? Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they do for something?
Well, if it's Moroccan fish, I guess you would use it. Anyway, but for some reason, okay, let's say you are going to use it eventually. But right now, what are we going to do? We poured out the liquid, then we're going to pour the fish together with the rest of the fish.
Into a different container.
Where the other fish already lie. I don't know, it's little by little. Okay? Or all together, actually, but you've already poured out the liquid.
So what you're saying is, without the liquid, you now don't have 60 against the Tommy fish, is here?
The what?
That once the liquid is gone, you no longer have 60 against the Tommy fish.
One more time?
Once the liquid is gone,
right,
you no longer have sea in the pot against the Tommy fish.
Yes.
But you don't have liquid in there anymore either.
Right.
So you have Yavish B'Yavish.
Exactly. Very good.
You don't need 60.
Exactly. So in this scenario,
that's the solution.
Well, it's not a solution, it's a scenario.
Yeah.
In that scenario, where you've already poured out the liquid, and then poured the fish all together, because you don't have liquid, you don't have balua coming out and affecting other fish without roitev.
Because its fish is lying out by itself.
Right.
It's not being affecting each other. They're
Yeah. So you understand? I'm saying even if it was boleya first, they were boleya.
Right. So each individual was boleya something.
Right. But right now
there was 60 then.
Yeah.
So then it didn't bother us, and now that it's going to bother us, since they're roitev, they don't transfer any more blias one from the other because they don't have roitev. Yeah. Is that the point?
Yeah, that's one situation. Because even if you had some of the fish being boleya, right? Once you pour them into another ke'ara, those fish cannot aser the other fish without any roitev.
Right, exactly.
There's no roitev, so it's not going to be a problem of asering the other. Yeah, so that would be a different scenario.
And legabe that it was Yiburleya in Israel, it has an Israel balua, but that Israel balua was misbatul misi because at that time roitev was still in the pot.
Roitev was still
originally there was 60. There was roitev in the pot, and there was 60. So the whatever Isser was balua was misbatul in 60. And now that the roitev was removed, there is no longer 60, but there's also no longer roitev.
Right. So whether it's in the pot or poured into another pot, it would not present.
What I'm worried about is the fish that was balea the Isser that was still roitev in the pot. And we said last week or so, 2 weeks ago, that you still can't eat the heter that it's an Isser balua because you don't know whether it gave off everything.
Yeah,
was bully.
right. That's efshar.
Right.
Right.
But here we don't need to worry about that.
No, in this case, and you're talking about the last scenario?
Right. Or do we need to worry about the fish that was bully at the Isser, the fish that was bully at...
Not if there was Shishim. Not if there was Shishim.
Right.
You don't have to worry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, another hesber is according to Rabbeinu Shimshon. He says, Mi'ikara, and that's the one that he brought down here. Mi'ikara, we're not choishesh, this is Rabbeinu Shimshon, to Aser. Why? There's no chashash. There's no chashash that the dag tomer remained behind. In other words, you don't have to be concerned bichlal with that ever happening. Why? Because he holds of the svara of isura beroba isa. The isur is to be found wherever the roiv is. So we assume you took out the roiv, the dag already came out. It's similar to called the parish beruba parish that we will eventually see.
Yes.
He holds of a svara of isura beruba isa. In other words, the isur is to be found where the majority is. You don't know where it was in which batch. We assume it came out in the batch where the roiv is. So it was not, if the roiv is out, it's not left behind.
But until the roiv is out, it's not going to. The roiv isn't going to come out at one event. Slowly, first a little comes out, more comes out, more comes out, more comes out, until eventually roiv comes out.
Huh?
Why?
No, we're talking about in this situation the way Rabbi Shimshon explains. It would have to be. This is what the Shach explains, that the roiv is already out.
I'm just saying.
Obviously,
you have a pot. You have
right.
a pot with food. Now you pour it into kedera. So when you pour it into kedera, you don't take the pot and put it upside down. You lean it over,
right?
And there's slowly stuff coming out.
Yeah, but it appears that it was done in 2 or 3 batches. In other words, or times, not just little.
Or maybe with a ladle.
It could be, yeah, somehow. So that's why the Shach explains that according to this heter to work, that you say that isura beruba isa, that the dag tomik came out already in the roiv, that the roiv is already out.
So my question was,
you've taken out
the possibility of using a ladle.
No, we're not. That's the next halacha, by the way. There is a halacha about a ladle.
So that's going to be different.
Slightly different. Yeah.
Right now we're not talking about a ladle. Because that'll be a different halacha. Because if you're talking about a ladle, whatever is in the ladle is already separated from the contents of the pot. It's a minority for sure.
It's not mentioned here, but we will talk about it.
I'm just saying, whatever is in the ladle is a minority compared to what's in the pot.
That's true.
And is separated already.
Yeah, but that's what the Shach says, that this...
So you must be talking where it's not no ladle.
No, this svara, Rabbeinu Shimshon, is without a ladle, where you have everything, you have a majority already out, and we make the assumption that the isura beruba isa. So according to that, you don't have to be concerned about the dag tomer being left behind and asering and then pouring and making everything else aser.
But my question is, so normally it will be coming out slowly, step by step.
As the Basar says, kimo, slowly.
But since it's already in a klisheni when it comes
Right.
out,
We're talking
so
about
the fact that in the klisheni it's a minority doesn't bother me.
It would never be a problem, sure, even if it's a minority.
While there's still a majority in the pot. And once in the pot it's become a minority and the majority is already in the klisheni, so now the isser is with the majority in the klisheni, so I don't have to worry about what stayed behind in the pot. Which is
I didn't understand that. One more time.
Whatever is in the klisheni, I don't worry about the isser because
at any given time.
Right, any given time. Now, while I'm pouring out, first in the klisheni there will be a little bit, and it will grow.
Right.
So in the klisheni it will be a minority, and in the rishon remains the majority, so the isser is still there.
Yes.
Why am I worried about that point in time? Which
you are.
You
are. If the majority is, if you don't have the.
Are we talking about the case where we poured out the right to first?
No, not necessarily.
So I need to have 60 in the pot, not just.
Exactly. So that would still be a problem. That would still be a problem if you were left without shishim in the pot. Okay. So here we're talking. That's why the Shach says we must be talking about
120?
Here, but something else. He says here we must be talking about, even according to Rabbeinu Shimshon, that the roiv is already out. Okay,
is already before what occurs?
The roiv is already out.
Before what? Already.
In comparison to what's in the kedera.
So the roiv is out in comparison to what's in the kedera.
So therefore, if that's the case, according to his hesber, you never really have that problem of having the Isur being left behind that you have to worry about.
But you can have a majority still in the pot.
Okay.
But that's no longer 60 against the Isser.
Yeah, so you'd have a problem. It's in the original pot. Here it's a Kli Sheni.
The Kli Rishon, I mean.
Yeah,
you can have the majority in the pot, because as you're pouring out, Lahatchila,
right,
there will be a little bit already in the Kli Sheni, and still the majority in the Kli Rishon.
Yeah.
And eventually the majority will end up in the Kli.
Yes.
So during that process,
it will become
you
also.
would have less than 60, but
you would have less than 60, sure. So that majority doesn't help me.
How do you have the majority in Kli Sheni? How do you already have the majority?
You poured out the majority out already, and a little bit was left behind.
But why aren't you worried about that little bit that was left behind that it already came Tom at a previous point in time when we didn't have?
Well, I'm saying, remember, the Shach explains that in order for this, that's where the Shach explains.
So according to the Shach, you need 120.
Yeah, well, that's Bichlal. Yeah, it's a situation. That's as far as if you want to be matter what's left behind and matter what's outside.
Right.
But he's saying based on this hesber of Isuro Beruba Isa, and therefore I never have to concern myself. Never have to concern myself. Remember, forget about the 120 right now. I never have to concern myself about a piece of Isur being left behind and causing problems.
With a minority.
And later, with the rest, because it's going to answer according to the Rivah.
So I never have to worry that it'll be...
Because the Isur came out already.
Because I never have to be worried about the Isur remaining with the minority.
Yes. Remaining with less than Shishim.
Why less than Shishim? Less than Shishim could be a majority.
Forget about... No. The Isur came out with the majority.
Yeah.
It's a klal, it's a rule.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
And because of that, you don't have a problem now left behind.
If the majority... Yes.
Right.
Why?
You don't have an Isur anymore left behind.
After the majority already came
See,
out.
remember, what's the chashash?
After the majority...
What's the chashash?
Yes,
the chashash means it could be that it will remain behind and there's not enough. There's not enough to be mevatalet.
Yes.
Okay. The Rabbi Shimshon says, I don't have that kind of chashash. I'm assuming the Isur came out already.
He's assuming the Isur will be wherever the majority is.
Right. It has nothing to do right now. Don't think about Beetle right now. Just think about this klal. The Isur will
I'm
be...
saying it doesn't solve the problem.
It does, because the Isur came out first.
The Isur will be wherever the majority is.
Right.
So if the majority is still in the pot...
So the Shach says no. The Shach says it can't be in the pot.
Well, when you have 120.
The Shach says, the Shach says, therefore, we're talking about that the majority is outside the pot. In order for this to work. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And how did the majority get out of the pot?
And he poured out the majority.
So while you're pouring out, you'll have some point in time which the majority is still in the pot. When you pour out the first drop.
No, but it's not drops. Obviously, he's talking about the first batch came out, and that's where the Isur is.
So he's turning the pot upside down.
Well, I'm not exactly upside down. But
otherwise, how could everything come out at once?
It doesn't have to be instantaneously, obviously.
So if it's an event that takes time...
It doesn't take that much time.
How long does it have to stick together in the pot?
It doesn't say. They don't discuss it. But they poured it out, right? And then you're going to pour out it again.
While you're still pouring, it's not a problem?
No, it's not a problem. Nobody says that it's a problem while you're pouring.
Why?
Yeah. As you're pouring. I mean, it's only if it stayed behind.
Still on stream?
Yeah, it's actually they talk about kiluach. They got be'irui. It's mentioned that it's a kiluach shenifsa. Why is it? Why, according to those who hold it's not irui, that it's also kedekli, but they talk about nifsaka kiluach. It's not a continuous stream. But in this case, it would be. It's a lot of solids, so the solids just came pouring down, and that is why you have that other scenario that says, "Let's pour out the liquid first, so it doesn't splash." In other words, otherwise it would be a problem pouring so much with liquid.
So the instructions would have to be make sure that the majority of the fish come out at once.
Yeah, that's what the Shach explains, based on this hesber, that the reason why this is mutar b'di'evet is because of a klal, a new rule, called Isura Beruba Isa. And so the Shach says, well, that's of course assuming that the roiv is outside, and what remained behind therefore is not a problem.
And that is provided that I don't see that the Isura actually left behind with it.
Yeah, no, you have to remove the Isur regardless.
I'm just saying, so you removed the Isur already?
Yeah, you have to remove the Isur, yeah.
I was saying, so you removed the Isur before you poured everything?
No, afterwards. You discovered it, and you removed it.
And was it in the pot or in the Niddah?
In the Ka'ara.
In the Ka'ara?
No, Ka'ara. The pot is the Niddah.
Yeah.
Right.
So that,
right. Okay. Anyway, the Ramah says, another explanation. That's the one we read inside. The lo machzikinan isura. He says we don't assume that there was an isur to begin with. What does that mean? It's a little bit different, but it appears to be very similar to Rabbeinu Shimshon. Okay, he says that the isura is beruba, and he says lo machzikinan isura, to say that the isur was always left behind at the end. So some are going to make a nafkamina between these two. They're going to say there's a little bit of a difference between the two, even though some say they're very much the same. But his explanation, which is based on Rabbeinu Shimshon, is that we're not machzik to say, presuppose that the isur was left behind in the end of the gdera. And therefore, we don't aser misafik the whole thing. According to this, if you hold this is different than Rabbeinu Shimshon, you don't even need a roib outside. Okay, you just, you poured it once, you poured it twice. You don't make that idea that it's possible that the isur remained behind at the end. You don't think about it. Lo machzakin an isura to presuppose that.
But wouldn't this be a suffix to a rice on the chum? How is this different? Wouldn't this suddenly be a suffix to a rice on the kula? Lo machzakin isur.
Right.
Obviously,
we're going to soon see. And in next Hezbollah, we're going to see that it's not. It's not. There's no Isur Deraisa for another reason.
Oh, there's no Isur Deraisa.
Yeah. You're going to see why. This is that's why the Shach, if you have the time, the Shach and the Bach also a little bit sheds light on this, is that there are all kinds of scenarios, there are all kinds of Hezberim, all kinds of reasons of why it would not be Osur B'di'evet. The vast majority seem to be saying that it's not a problem for different reasons. So that's what I want to do now. I want to go through the various reasons. So the Ramah's reason of Ein Machzikin Isur is similar, and some say the same, as Rabbeinu Shimshon, that the Isur is Beruba Isur. And therefore we don't assume or concern ourselves that the Isur was left behind, and therefore it never poses a problem. B'di'evet. Okay. Another reason brought down in Torah's Chatas, the Shach also talks about it, is that the reason why this is Mutter B'di'evet is very similar to the case, remember, where you had Min B'minoi, that was cooked, shenishpach, and you don't know if there was shishim or not. But we do know there was at least roiv. And what's the din? Since min b'minu ruba is batal, miduraisa, the whole din of shishim is b'nirabanan, so it's a suffix derabanan lekula. So this is very similar, a suffix in a derabanan, and therefore we're mekel.
Are we talking about min b'minu?
Oh, very good. You're being... you're being mechaven to the Shach a lot. The Shach gets into a whole sugi over here. Is this min b'mino or min b'eino mino? About the dog tome. Does that make it a min b'eino mino? So it says if it does, it can complicate everything. Yeah. But on the one hand, it does appear to be a min b'mino. So he says, but this would be an additional explanation as to why we are makel here b'di'evet. It would be a suffix to Rabbanon B'kula. There's a suffix, and the suffix would be on the Rabbanon. It would be very similar. But then he goes and says, but wait a minute, is this really? Then he says, but wait a minute, is this really a min b'minoi or min she'eino minoi? Why? Because maybe the dog told me is min she'eino minoi.
Because according to the Ran,
right?
According to the Ran, it would be a min she'eino minoi.
Yeah. So that's the question. That's the shach. If you want to have the time to go into it, very interesting. A long shach. We discussed that on several points. He brings up this question of whether this is going to end up being a min be'eino minoi, and that is why he himself brings out additional reasons as to why this will be mutar b'di'evet, not only necessarily because of this, but soon we will see that which explanation you give as to what's mutar is going to make a difference. You'll see. I'll leave that to the end. One or two more explanations. One more idea, also brought in the Shach. This is similar. Not everybody talks about this one, but the Shach brings it out, so I figured we'll talk about it. In Kuf Yud Aleph, we will see a very interesting situation where you have two kederos cooking on top of a stove, each one having 30 zaysim, measures of heter. And you have a zayis of Isser falling into one, you don't know which one. You don't know into which pot it fell in. You have a suffix, a real suffix. It fell into one. And these two pots will eventually be combined together. So at some point you will have shishim. No. At some point they were intended to be combined anyway.
But you already know that there's an issue before you combine.
Okay, eventually we'll get to that. Yeah, right. It doesn't make a difference. But That's the scenario there, and we hold over there that since the end result is to be that they're going to be combined anyway.
So they already
are mevatel, right?
That is a very hypothetical. That's very theoretical.
Why? Because over there we hold it kol ma shenichnas besofek mitztaref l'shishim. Anything that has come into the suffix, kol ma shenichnas besofek is mitztaref l'shishim. So if you're going to be combining the two kederas, it's all mitztaref to mevatel.
But what's this?
So here too. So he still. So the Shach says that here too, perhaps the dag atome is nesar. The dag atome may have been answered one batch, which eventually will combine with the other batch. So it all comes into the same. It all adds up together to be mevatel the time.
What's the suffix in this case?
Everything will be combined together in the ke'ora.
But we said that to say that was
because we don't know which. Remember, we don't know which fish was there.
Oh, we don't know.
And now they're mixed. Yeah.
The fish.
Right. So here the Shach again discusses does it make a difference min b'mino or min b'she'ena mina here. This he says because b'min b'mino this would work too, because there's no tam, so we can be mekel. But what about when there's tam? You can feel it. Could you say that too? So is this a min b'mino or min b'she'ena mina? So that he's done on that.
When he says a kol mitzdaref b'safek, did you say?
Yeah. Kol ma shenichnas b'safek mitzdaref l'shishim.
So he says that this rule can only work by min b'mino.
It would work better by min b'mino.
It would work better.
Sure.
But it still also works by min b'mino?
That's what he analyzes. Yeah. Could it really work? Yeah. It may not.
What does he conclude?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, what he concludes. So the nafkamina between all the reasons is like this. If you hold the din of roiv, it doesn't work by beitzim. If you hold that the hesber, the explanation is because it's similar to nishpach, right? Yeah. It's similar to nishpach, or what was the other one? Or similar to the explanation of ein machzikin and iser. Then this explanations could apply very easily to beitzim too. It doesn't only have to apply to fish. If you hold only the bitul beroiv, it doesn't really apply so much to the beitzim. The Premier Godman, I think, explains, and others explain that you don't cook so many eggs. It may not be shayach then. If you only hold that that's the only reason, it may not be shayach when there is no roiv. If you hold ein machzikin and iser, like the Ramos is to be saying, or you hold like the other explanation brought down in the Shach Toras Chatas, that it could be similar to nishpach, the whole thing, that it's a suffix here, then this could apply to beitzim as much as dogim too, regardless of the amounts you have. You follow me? That's why, depending on which explanation you give, it could be a nafkamina whether this could apply to eggs as well. Because by eggs, roiv would not work if you don't make that many eggs, unless you knew for sure.
Well, roiv would be 3
unless
eggs.
You knew for sure. Unless you knew for sure.
But as I was saying, roiv would be 3 eggs.
Yeah. No, you would need. Remember, you would still need the original amount.
So you would need to have
to mevatel.
60.
Yeah, you still need.
And you're not sure if you had 62 or
right.
not.
Yeah.
Because you
61. Yeah.
So you're not sure if you had 62 or not.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Shach, therefore, you ask Halacha L'maaseh, he goes into a whole thing about whether this is an Issur D'Rabbanan or this is the Raisa, when you have to be machmer or not. And there's also a second discussion amongst the Achronim, I think Chochmas Adam and others, whether should we end up taking a klipa anyway?
Because of the eroi.
Because of the eroi, should we or not? So that still remains some sort of a machloikis between the Achronim. What do we do in the end? Even though we're mater b'di'evet, as everybody pretty much seems to be mater today b'di'evet, depending, of course, on what the explanation is, will make a difference in some scenarios, like with eggs. But how about the klipa? Do we need a klipa or not? So there seems to be different opinions whether you need a klipa or not. But all of these explanations are valid. Just that the Ramah chose for himself chose the explanation of ein machzikin and isur. We're not machzik. We don't suspect that that's so. Even though lechatchila, the mechaber and the Ramah, of course, are advising us this is the way you should do it, but if it happens, you don't have to worry about it. So anyway, we'll continue Mr. Shem next week.